Most of us were never taught how to deal with conflict. Not at home, not at school, definitely not at work. But what do you do when things keep bubbling under the surface? When you're biting your tongue, carrying stress, or dreading that one person on the team who just grinds your gears? What if conflict could help create deeper relationships, better leadership, and more connected teams? So whether you're working on the shop floor or sitting in the boardroom, tension shows up, and how we deal with it can either build trust or quietly break it. This is Healthy Conflict, the podcast where we stop treating conflict like a problem to avoid and start treating it like an opportunity for greater success. Because the best leaders, the ones people actually want to be with, aren't the ones who shut conflict down. They're the ones who get good at tough conversations. This isn't just about being a better communicator, it's about building cultures where people want to stay, grow, and give their best. I'm Rasha Shaheen, and I help visionary leaders step out of the daily firefighting into their zone of genius by designing cultures that thrive without them. And you can find me at Rasha Shaheen on LinkedIn.
And I'm Rainey Martin, and I inspire entrepreneurs, leaders, and teams to improve their bottom line by helping to build workplaces that people love and customers never forget. I can be found at coachrainey.com.
Hi, Rainey.
Raja, it's so great to be here again. Today we have an incredible show planned, right? We're
Yeah,
talking about overworking to prove worth, right?
yeah.
Um, Overworking as a survival strategy, not really just a productivity issue. It's not about like lazy time management. It's really about, am I enough if I'm not constantly producing?
That's exactly it. That's exactly it. Like, yeah. When we kind of like have that hustle and it becomes a habit, like that just over productivity when it's just like when it just leads to burnout. And you said it just now, it's like this is not something about kind of like an external conversation now. It's actually now where this conversation is figuring out your part of your responsibility within this hustle culture, within this kind of like toxic culture, and like what part do you play within all of that? And I think you've touched on it just there. So yeah, I am
Yeah,
really looking forward to this conversation.
yeah, me too, me too. Yeah, I think exactly. Like it's not just about cultures where praise only goes to the busiest people, right? Where it's a value to be productive all the time, right? That's part of it. That's part of the issue for sure.
Yeah,
When productivity is it gets the highest rewards, but the other element, right, is the fear of not being valuable,
yeah,
right? Like some people were raised, with conditional praise, hustle culture, um, capitalism's kind of myth of merit, right?
yeah,
And this is a very common way to be raised in America, right? And even like in homes where you feel like you've had a really great childhood, a lot of times this is an underlying theme of even when you're in school, right? Even when you're super super young, like we have these kids that sometimes are with us, and there's that most recently they were 6 and 7, and our focus with them very much was on learning to read, right? If they don't learn to read now, then they end up behind for a long time. And so that's where they got a lot of their rewards from us. And
yeah,
we didn't, of course, we didn't think of it as being bad parents, right? We thought
yeah,
about of it as being good parents. But what were we laying the groundwork for
yeah,
them, right? We were laying the groundwork for your worth is wrapped up in your accomplishments, in your
yeah.
academic accomplishments in that case, right? So
Yeah.
just sorry, going, a little bit on a tangent, but down to
No,
the
but
roots of where these kind of things begin.
it's all
Yeah.
part of it. You've just said something that's really powerful, and it's actually making me think of like Growth Mindset by Carol Dweck.
Mm,
And she also kind of talks about this, it's like whether this idea of how we praise someone that forms our mindset. And what you just highlighted, okay, I am going to go on a tangent now, because like there's two extremes. A fixed mindset is when you're kind of someone who is scared of failure, and but it, you know you get praised for your identity. And a growth mindset is you get praised for the effort that you put in it. But you've
Mm.
just highlighted that, like, when someone's not afraid of failure, but you've just highlighted that even that can be in an extreme as well, because you're praising like someone for doing the work, and it's actually only when they do work, it's that conditional love. Both,
Or
it's
it
all,
can be
it's
perceived. It can be perceived as conditional love. Yeah.
that, yeah, exactly that. So thank you for that clarification. That perception, perceived as conditional love, and really what we want is that unconditional love, like it is so connected. It might sound like a tangent, but it is so connected. It is at the root of everything. And it's kind of, overworking as a survival strategy, kind of not, getting your worth from praise. And so working to get praise, because if you don't get the praise, you'll be dispensable.
Yes. And I think that is another key element of how what leads to overworking is this feeling of this need to be indispensable. All the fear that's wrapped up in being dispensable and being the next person to get laid off. And especially in today's, I don't know actually what it's like in the UK, but in
Yeah.
America, there's very much an environment of layoffs these last few years, and a need to feel like you have a lot of value and that your value is being recognized
Yeah.
and acknowledged so that you're not the next person off the bus.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
And 100%, and it's happening now, and it's happening these days. And I've had a number of conversations with people actually in the past few weeks, and especially with AI coming into the picture,
Yes.
there is kind of a lot of restructuring, a lot of that work going on at the moment. But I just want to kind of, touch on that kind of like, when, the issues with those kind of inner, that those feelings, of like coming in to a conversation and kind of like, like overworking or over anxiety or over protection. It doesn't it doesn't give you what you want, in the, like, it doesn't create. Sometimes it does, yes, you are doing great work, but sometimes you're actually creating tension that's just not useful for everyone else, like that worry that you have around the work that you do. It's off-putting.
Yeah, it can be very impactful on your coworkers and your supervisors. Absolutely. I just I want to make sure that we sort of capture like
Yeah.
all of the reasons why, all of the potential roots for this,
Yeah.
before we kind of get into tools.
Yeah.
Although I think we do have some useful tools that we can offer, but I think that's a really good point that a lot of times people don't think about, that the energy they create around
Yeah.
their job and around their relationship to this overwhelming workload that
Yeah.
may or may not you know, be needed,
Yeah.
um, can have a profound effect on their
Yeah.
coworkers and their supervisors, and then also their direct reports, right? Because they're modeling. Leaders are
Yeah.
always, just like parents, leaders are always modeling behavior, and direct
Yeah.
reports learn from their leaders what's acceptable, what's valued, what behaviors are wanted. And
Yeah.
I think that's a tremendous point. Yeah, yeah. So some other things around um, overworking is that work becomes a primary source of identity and self-worth, and even love, right? I mean, just again, sort of drawing from those childhood experiences that may or may not have occurred to someone, right? Still associating um, achievement at work with
Yeah.
acceptance, approval, love.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then also, like, a lot of times when someone's personal life is chaos, or something that they want to retreat from, right? Work can feel more controllable than your personal life. It's a place to win when other areas feel unwinnable. So that can be another element that's
So like, basically overworking, what I'm hearing you say is that sometimes overworking can be fine. It's not kind of like only like fine in the sense that like, the work is okay, the output is fine, but there's a knock-on effect to family life. But then, that's just one shape of it. Another shape is like when you're overworking and you say yes to too much, you're actually setting yourself up for failure.
yes, absolutely. Absolutely. Right. Right. Yeah.
Because
Um
you don't want to let anyone down, but you actually end up overworking, and you do end up letting people down.
And yeah, because a lot of times you don't have the energy or the bandwidth
Capacity. Yeah,
to show up in the end. Right, right.
yeah,
You get stretched too thin, and
yeah,
so then instead of winning, you disappoint others, and then yourself, and then you put yourself into that shame spiral, right,
yeah.
where you feel inadequate or like you failed others.
Yeah.
Um, other thing. Go ahead. Yeah.
No, I was going to say, like, and a knock-on effect of that. Well, and that's like, that's strand two, and then another strand is when you actually say yes to everything and think that no one can do the work like you can, and probably
Mhm,
you can do the work. You're not allowing others to learn. You're not allowing others to grow, and and it becomes inefficient in that way. You probably are doing the work and you are doing too much work, but you don't actually need to if you allow the team to grow with you.
mhm. If you empower others and give
Yeah,
autonomy. Yep.
yeah,
Yep. Just some other drivers, right, for
yeah.
overworking. Sometimes if home feels stressful or lonely or overwhelming, working more can become an unconscious coping mechanism, right? Um, Also anxiety management. Sometimes when you feel anxious, if you're working, you're not thinking about the things that make you feel anxious. You're not in that anxiety place because you're focused on achieving and accomplishing, right?
So the why behind overworking is kind of running away.
Mhm. Yeah, right. It gets like a drug. Yeah, it can be. It can be. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And
I
and
mean,
then
I'm gonna, yeah, and it's a tricky one, isn't it? I just want to stop there and just kind of like, it is a tricky one because how do you know? Because I used to think, or well, I actually love work. I love work, right? But like I think that there is a distinction now to like 5 years ago. I'm like luckily I have always chosen work that I'm passionate about. I'm kind of just dropping in a little kind of sparkle bomb here. Like how do you know the difference
mm,
between like when it's toxic overworking and actually passion?
wow, that's a yep, that's a powerful question. Right. Right. Um I guess one thing that comes to mind is something we've
Yeah,
talked about before
yeah,
when we're trying to determine something else, right?
yeah,
Another this has come up for another question like um we when we were looking at our saboteurs versus sage and we
yeah.
asked ourselves, are we coming from a place of love or are we
Yeah,
coming from a place of fear, right?
that's it. That's it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, I
So,
think that's it.
I will say that I brought that up in one of my groups just recently, and that didn't actually resonate for them because they didn't feel like they're coming necessarily from a place of fear. And so we rephrased it, which I think in a way that's really relevant here to
Yeah.
am I coming from a positive place or am I coming from a negative place?
I mean, that's just as I'll take that
Right.
explanation. I think that's really great.
Right. Right.
And it's
So,
spot on, actually. And I think that is the definition of burnout, when what you're doing, does it align with you or not?
yes, exactly. Does it align with you? Yes. Does it align with your own deeper values?
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
And that I think brings me to the last point I wanted to make about one of the drivers, the last driver I wanted to talk about, which is that some of us were raised in environments where rest was laziness and busyness was virtue. And so one of our values is being productive, right?
Yeah.
But sometimes that turns into being productive for productiveness sake rather
Yeah.
than being productive in ways that are deeply fulfilling and nurturing to us as human beings because they're aligned
Yeah.
with our deeper values.
That's it. So there is a kind of a distinction that we were touching on something here that's even deeper, and it's just it's checking in with yourself. Are you
Mm.
harming yourself or are you gifting yourself? Because overwork, if you're loving it, might not be so bad.
Yes, agreed, agreed. I love that what you just said. Are you harming yourself or are you gifting yourself?
Yeah.
Absolutely. I think that is a key distinction. And for those of you listening that are gifting yourself, this episode is not for you because
Yes.
that's wonderful. It's wonderful that you feel super passionate about something and that it's fulfilling for you. And yeah, you don't need any advice about setting boundaries. It's when it's harming you, when it's
Yeah.
harmful to you. That's what this episode is about. Like, how
Yeah.
do you shift from proving to belonging? And what are
Yes.
some really clear tools for setting boundaries and being able to make them stick in a way that feels safe to you?
Yeah. I like that. Yeah. Yeah. And I guess there's an element of kind of just having the first step is always awareness, isn't it? That's always the first step. And it
Mhm.
might seem so simple and it might seem so easy, but I've started to recognize that it's not, that recognizing that you are overworking and it is not the norm. So starting there and kind of like naming the pattern and just saying and actually noticing I feel safest when I'm overdoing. And the word over
Mhm.
here, even if you like working a lot and doing a lot, when you're overdoing and noticing that, like what might be underneath that, asking that question.
Exactly. Exactly. And then, maybe practicing moments of kind of micro rest
Yeah.
and doing less to see what comes up for you. What kind of fears arise
Yeah.
when you take some time to rest? Because that will help you identify what's going on around
Yeah.
this behavior that you need to make sure to take care of in order to be able to set boundaries effectively.
And you know what? This again, it's another thing that like it might sound easy, it might sound simple, but I believe that uh, I'm going to make a random number here, but it's not that random. 80% of us don't like to feel our feelings.
Mm, yes, right, right. Absolutely.
So actually overworking,
It's a way to escape our feelings or to not
exactly.
to not have to feel.
So
Yes,
so this is, although again this sounds like easy, it's like but I love it. It's like just micro rest. Just kind of just try it and see what happens.
right, right. Yeah, and then you can ask yourself, like, what would change if I believed I didn't have to earn my place? And
Yeah.
again, it's not with respect to your supervisor or the culture, but with respect to you and what your belief system is. Some part of you maybe believes that you have to earn your place. And so what
Yeah.
would be different if you could let go of that belief?
Yeah. And to check in and recognize that it could be a belief and not a reality.
Yes, right, exactly. And then as a leader, right? Because we assume for the most part we're speaking to leaders here. Are
Yeah.
there things that you can do to rewire the team culture, right? To
Yeah.
support the idea of not overworking. So, like normalizing taking a break, taking a
Yeah.
pause, celebrating wise decisions, not just heroic output
Yeah.
or decisions or outcomes, right? Rather than
Yeah.
rather than the quantity of time, the quality of output, right?
Yeah.
Um, and practicing like shared ownership, like you were talking about before, rather than silent sacrifice. Only I can do this. I'm the only one that can handle this or can do this job. Start sharing your responsibilities in a healthy way that helps the team grow.
Yeah, yeah. I have a phrase like, actually, I'm going to say my boss, where I work, he says it all the time. It's like, don't kill yourself. Don't kill yourself. We can design our
Right.
own lives here. Don't kill yourself. No,
Wow.
it's amazing. And
Right.
it's like this idea that you don't need to bleed, to be valuable.
Right, right, and that does have to come from the culture. That does have to come
Yes,
from the leadership.
it
So,
does.
if you're a leader, then start communicating that. If you're not a leader, work to embed that in the culture. Talk to your
Yeah,
supervisor about it, right? How
yeah.
do you make it safe in your culture for people to be human and not just always high performing, right?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I want to just talk about an example here. I've got two examples, and it just like it happened to me this week. So one person I was coaching, she is like an extreme high performer, an extreme high performer. She wants everything right. She wants everything right, but to the point where she's kind of like hassling people, and kind of like she thinks she's coming from a good intention, but everyone's got like like piles of work as well, and like her priority is not necessarily their priority. And it's okay for me to say, because there's no names or anything, but she is jeopardizing her position because of the stress that she's creating everyone, and she has no understanding and awareness of that.
Mhm, mhm. How
Like,
she's landing. Yeah.
yeah, like the feedback has happened, it has been given, but she's not hearing it. She's hearing it as an injustice rather than a reality.
Mm, mm. Yeah, this is so important because it's just an example of how we can get so mired in our own belief systems of what is valuable and what is
Yeah,
right and what is
yeah,
useful and miss how we're landing,
yeah,
miss how we're impacting others, how we're impacting the team, how we're impacting the culture.
yeah.
Yeah, so it's really a lot about self-awareness and self-reflection. Yeah.
Self-awareness, self-reflection, and I am going to add here that like her her drivers, like are coming from, like we were talking about, that place of fear, or that place of like, it's coming from that place of fight.
Mhm,
And
mhm.
emotions being contagious, the other person doesn't know what's going on, but they just sense danger, so they don't want
Right,
to work with her.
right, right. It's scary for them. Yeah,
Yeah,
and so they retreat. Yeah,
yeah.
or try to avoid her, try to avoid working with her. Yeah,
And complain about her.
yeah.
and
It's
she
dangerous
and
for her.
she's and she come it's so I honestly thought, like, like it was such an interesting example, because she's not trying to be negative, she's
Mhm.
trying to do good.
Trying
So
to be
this is where
valuable.
she's trying to be valuable. She's trying to be valuable. So like miscommunication, you know?
Mhm, mhm.
It's yeah, anyway. It's
Misalignment,
just
miscommunication
yeah,
and misalignment, and
yeah,
also something that I've talked to one of my recent groups about a lot, this a senior team, just, getting feedback about how you're landing, how you're delivering things,
yes.
right?
Beautiful,
People
beautiful.
do not there's no way for someone to know how they land unless they get feedback. And obviously, of course, you wanna give feedback in a kind, constructive way, right? Just the way you would wanna have feedback given to you. But
Yeah,
people don't know how they come off
yeah,
without hearing about it.
yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, so that's a key element. Maybe we'll do another episode about that.
It is, but it
Um,
just all links into this idea of like, this idea of like learning how to have a culture that understands healthy conflict.
yes, right, right, bringing it back, yeah. Let's talk about, just before we close, let's talk about some tools, for setting boundaries and making them stick, right?
Yeah,
For instance, one issue is that setting boundaries is actually only half the battle, right? First of all, you got to get yourself to a place where you can set boundaries, and part of doing that is soothing the anxiety that comes up when you think about setting boundaries, right? Like for instance, um, one thing that came up in a conversation recently was that remote employees sometimes feel like they have to be available 24/7 because they have the luxury of working remotely, or because they feel like if they're not available 24/7, people will think they're not working enough because they're not visible working,
Yeah.
right? And so, maybe something is that remote workers who have this pressure that they feel to always be on to prove they're working, maybe some things they could do is like, update their status in a way that says like deep work back at 3, or offline heads down on project, XYZ, so that they're communicating in their status what they're doing and why they're not available, right? Or even like an end of day recap to their team or their supervisor, right? A quick message like, wrapping for today, here's what I accomplished, and here's what's on deck for tomorrow. Just
Yeah.
communicating, managing up and managing down so that they feel like they're communicating clearly about what they're accomplishing, and their teammates and their supervisors also have a better understanding of where they're at. Also, like if teams are using task boards like Asana or Trello, or even Slack, right? Making sure that they're updated so progress is transparent,
Mm.
without having to constantly be available, right?
Mm, mm,
It's
mm. So transparency.
Yeah, exactly. Transparency and communication. Yeah, yeah. Um, Yeah, another thing is having like your boundaries, normalizing your boundaries again by communicating, right? Let your team know I take lunch from 12 to 1 and I won't be checking my emails during that time, or I log off at 5:30 to be with my family. If anything is urgent, I check messages at 8 a.m. the next day, right?
So
Clearly.
I want to ask you something here, because these are all great if you're confident to do it.
Yes, right. 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 Perfect. Perfect. Right. So, um, so here, maybe you start with like, uh, micro check boundaries, right? Like, if you're not sure that it's safe to set the boundary, maybe you try like a smaller version. Like, hey, I'm gonna try to not respond to messages after 6 p.m. unless it's urgent. Let's see how that feels for all of us. Start small.
Yeah.
And then you can test that and you can adjust. Also, like an internal script, like things to tell yourself to help yourself feel safe and
Mm.
feel confident, right? I produce value through the quality of my work, not the quantity of my hours.
Yeah.
Or I'm allowed to rest. Rest fuels my contribution, right? Something we talk about a lot is like taking a break is what rejuvenates us and makes us show up as our best self. In order
Yeah.
to be our best self, we have to have downtime.
Yeah.
Um, yeah,
And
exactly.
I think one really, really important thing is to talk with your team or with your supervisor or with your whatever, like before you do all of this,
Yeah.
just I think that's the bit that kind of like, because a lot of the time people need permission.
Mhm.
Interestingly enough, people need permission to do it. And
Absolutely.
just like if you are feeling overworked, or feeling that you can't, have boundaries, because it's like that's the jump for me. Like, yes, we can create boundaries, but the bit that's missing is giving yourself permission to create boundaries. and
Mhm.
and that takes I mean, I'm talking from personal experience here actually as well, and looking at the people around me. I'm actually thinking there's one person I know who does ridiculously overwork, and he would never write that email of like, here's what I'm working, and don't he would
Mm.
never do that. He needs to
Mm.
always be on and available,
Wow.
and
Uh-huh.
it's having conversations, I think, that then allows him to then look after himself,
So what does that conversation look like?
well, again, I think if you're lucky and you have people around you, like a good leader who is trying to create this culture, to for the leader to notice, like, I think you're overworking here. Like, is there anything you can do to like protect yourself? Like, like their line manager or something like that. Like, all the leaders have leaders as well. Like, just having that care in the culture, and it does always start with the leader. But if not, you know, this is the thing. It's like, this is the gap at the moment, because people who do overwork might not give themselves the permission.
Right. Right.
Does that
So
make
one
sense? Do you agree or disagree? What are you
Oh,
hearing
yeah.
in everything I'm seeing?
Absolutely, absolutely agree. Absolutely agree. Yeah, I mean, that's who this episode is for, right?
Yeah.
Is people
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
who don't feel
Okay.
comfortable. Yeah.
Okay, amazing. Then we're giving you the permission.
We give you the permission. But one thing you can do is ask yourself, what am I really afraid will happen if I hold this line? And is that true? Sometimes the story that we're telling ourselves is scarier than the reality. Thanks for being with us today. Conflict doesn't mean that something's wrong, it means something matters. And when you learn to handle it well, everyone wins: your team, your business, and your own well being. Stay steady, stay human. This is where real leadership begins. See you next time.